Now, staying in Nigeria, the government has approved the sum of 27.5 trillion naira for the 2024 appropriation bill. Minister of Budget and National Planning, Atiku Bagudu, disclosed these to State House correspondents on Monday after the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting. And this meeting was presided over by President Bola Tinubu at the Presidential Villa in Abuja. According to him, further details of the budget will be released when the president presents the budget to the National Assembly. In the meantime, President Bola Tinubu will on Wednesday present the 2024 budget to a joint session of the National Assembly. And joining me to talk about these on the news is an economist, Dr. Emeka Okengwu. Good afternoon, Dr. Emeka. And also we have Dr. Ogoho. Yes, glad to have you join me.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
Now, the president of Nigeria, Bola Tinubu, is to present a budget like we know of, 21.5 trillion naira to the Senate. Considering that last year's budget was 20.51 trillion naira signed by President Muhammadu Buhari, what is your reaction to these proposed budgets?
Well, the first thing is what we call it. The first reaction will be that it's not a financial plan yet. It's a financial proposal that you have cast in figures until it gets to the National Assembly tomorrow and then gets through the works. Then that's when you can begin to now look at it as an appropriation bill. That's when it now becomes a legal document. However, I think even after the MTEF, the Midterm Expenditure Framework, and the FSP was passed, the Federal Executive Council, I think, still further reviewed, some of the budget support lines, like exchange rate of the dollar. I think they've moved it now to 750. I think they've also moved the price for crude oil barrel to about 77 from the initial 73 that was in the FSP MTEF. In all, I think it's a good budget. I mean, it presents some very realistic figures and programs. And what even makes it more interesting is that it's not a budget that's looking at, projects as a where. It seems to be more focused on, aggregating the issues around taxation and, ramping up revenue. So first, let's see how it goes. We can only begin to really look at the meats. Not even after the presentation tomorrow, because that's just going to be formality. It will be when, the National Assembly begins to now, look at the figures and, begin to see what they'll change and what they'll leave, that we can begin to actually now start looking at it really as a project, for Nigeria.
If I may come in there, Dr. Emeka, Nigeria's economy has been on a roller coaster with inflation climbing to 27.33. In October, from what we had in September, which was 26.72%. Now, from an economist's point of view, what do you think should be the priority for the 2024 budget?
Well, from an economist's point of view, I don't even think we should be looking at the 27% because it just represents, what we might call a very small percentage of the whole. You're actually looking at the formal economy, which is less than 10% of the real issues on ground. You also have the real sector, okay, where a lot of the activities there are not captured and where a lot of the overhangs, of this inflationary trend of 27% actually is felt most. So for me, I think if I were to look at it, I would say let's take some kind of wartime approach to what this will be. And in wartime, there are three basic things you want to look at. First will be food. Okay. Second will be security. Okay. Third will be social inclusion. Now, food being the first and the most important of every other, thing that will rank second and third for me. Because if people are malnourished, you are looking at generations that will be lost. So I think there has to be some kind of national approach, some declaration of national emergency, okay, in our food systems. The moment we can be able to get our food right, then social inclusion becomes a lot easier, to begin to harness. And then you can now begin to talk about, also now dealing with security, because insecurity and is growing. Okay, a lot of people are frustrated. You go out to the streets, people are more angry not because they don't have money, but because they don't have money to buy food or whichever comes first. So it's a chicken and egg situation for me, really. So for me, my priority, I would have wanted a situation where, government would have put in a lot of, efforts in making certain that we are food secure. And then in building social inclusion, you look at skills. Okay, it's not enough for you to want to say you're putting people on the dole. Okay, it won't help. Not when your productivity levels are very, very low and you're very dependent, on external forces or external factors or external sources for a lot of even the things that are important to support your food security. So productivity can be enhanced and lifting people out of poverty can be enhanced when you're looking more at giving them, life skills that can be able to now help them to earn, living wages.
Mm. Let me just take you up on what you mentioned, which is productivity level being low right now in Nigeria. How do you think we can rack up or increase productivity level as we have it now?
If I use the word low, then I think maybe I scored it a little high. It's not even existing.
Mm.
Okay, it's almost minuscule. But what you can do is to first and foremost, get your Ministry of Science and Technology as that magnet that begins to, culture every other thing. We have listed, published over 6,000 technologies that are homegrown, they develop locally. We have a lot of institutes and institutions that can also come in to help us with making certain that we can grow our productivity. And what's productivity? Productivity it requires three elements. Element number one, of course, will be energy. Okay. Element number two will be raw materials. Element number three will be a human capital and skills. Element number four will be, being competitive vis-a-vis, your finished products, being able to get into, the global market or regional markets. So if you have technology at the heart of all these things I've mentioned, then you have a very strong chance of creating a market share for yourself and then improving or increasing or even starting, if you may, your productivity.
Mm. And let's talk about exchange rates for a minute. Now, the benchmark for exchange rates was placed at 700 naira to a dollar, with crude oil price at $73.96 per barrel. We have crude oil price as at $82 per barrel last week due to the war in Russia, also the war we have in Israel, fighting Hamas. Do you think the benchmark in line with the 2024 budget is a good rate with the possibility of resolution in these conflicts and tentative drop in crude oil prices?
It's been reviewed. I mean, in the past hour or 2 hours, it's been reviewed. The FEC has reviewed it to 750, naira to a dollar, and then about 77, point something percent to a barrel of oil. So it's been reviewed, and like I said, it's realistic. Remembering that when you're talking about a budget, you're not talking about a financial program. You're talking about a financial plan that you have couched in figures. Okay, so you also need to look at your revenues, where they are going to be coming from. Remembering that this budget in view now already has about 16 trillion exposure. Okay, of both borrowed funds and budget deficits. And remember that there's also 1 billion that I think is going to be coming from the African Development Bank. That's also going to be debt. So there's going to be a lot of debt burden. And then remember again that we also have, to keep paying, servicing our debts, our old debts. We're not even repaying, we are still servicing. So if you do not have what can be able to ensure or assure that you get, access to foreign exchange vis-a-vis earnings, okay, not borrowings, then you're going to be running into some headwind of sorts.
No, Dr. Emeka, I agree with you when you say it's been reviewed to 750 naira per dollar, but right now, the naira equates for about 800 naira to a dollar. I'm wondering, how does, for instance, Forex factor into a budget like this?
Well, you see, remember that we're trying to close the gaps. Okay, this is work in progress, and this is a budget, it's a financial plan. Okay, you might even find that the 1.8 million barrels of oil, that we're aiming to get might not be realistic. We could also surpass it. There are going to be external factors that will be able to influence that. So first, and what is important is that it's realistic. okay, we're not being ambitious. Okay, it is better to err on the side of caution. Okay, there's no need for you to guys start putting it against 1,000 and then you don't even hit 300. You just mentioned, the war in Russia. It has also mentioned, the ongoing one in between Israel and Hamas. Not because, they form some productive but they control the Suez Canal. Okay, so anything that infringes on that Arab Peninsula, can stop actually, the free flow of goods and services coming from the Suez Canal. So it's another major one and capable to impact on this. Again, as it is a disadvantage, it could also be a very major advantage. Okay, because most times that you have global conflicts like this is when the prices of oil spikes. But I don't think at this level and stage you should be excited, discussing price of crude oil. Really, I mean, we shouldn't. We should be talking about commodities. We should, with our arable land, with our array of natural resources in the agro-allied, in the mining, in water resources.
Where we may need to end the conversation. Dr. Emeka Okengwu, thank you so much for your expertise, development economist. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.